I am the unemployed friend, and today is my 30th birthday. So this is kind of I don't know, it's a bittersweet birthday for me. I think 30 represents a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people sort of are gracefully moving forward into adulthood. I think post 30, a lot of people definitely consider like fully adult. In society, there's a good chance that by 30, a lot of people should somewhat have some stuff figured out. Your 20s are supposed to be for, I don't know, experimenting, but also starting your career and sort of figuring things out. I've personally had a really rough go of that. I have had almost 10 different jobs, maybe 8 or 9 different jobs since I have been in my 20s. I've pretty much disliked them all for various reasons. It's definitely gotten to a point where I'm very worried. I've had 2 what I would call careers. One was being an automotive mechanic, and basically I decided I didn't want to do manual labor for the rest of my life. That was never really the plan. I always intended to start a business and go into business for my own. It seems like no matter what path that I thought, going into business for my own self was kind of always in the plans, or was at least always the end goal. I never wanted to stay just working as an employee. I've never dreamt of climbing the corporate ladder. Corporate ladders, in my opinion, are what I like to call structured gatekeeping, which is kind of a funny way to look at it, but it's really very true. I don't want to spend my life in a business just waiting for someone to give me permission to shine, or give me permission to do more work, or apply myself more. But it's become a really big problem for me. I would say I've tried a lot of entrepreneurial ventures, and I've also tried a lot of different money makers aside from typical employment, and it hasn't really worked out for me. And honestly, at this point, I'm 30 years old, and I feel like I'm in extremely bad shape financially. The good news is I'm in better shape than some because I don't really have any debt. Debt is something that is extremely bad, in my opinion, because, it is literally akin to, I don't want to say slavery, but the borrower is slave to the lender. That is very true, and I have watched a lot of young people, friends, family, a lot of people who basically get saddled with a ton of debt. And sometimes that's student debt, which may or may not be a good thing. It really depends on whether or not it brought a good, lucrative career. But a lot of people just go into stupid personal credit card debt. I also think financing vehicles is really something that get a lot of people in trouble. I think I notice it more because I'm a car guy, and so it's I really put a lot of value in cars. I think cars are really cool. I love cars. At the same time, I don't think going into tens of thousands of dollars of debt to get a car that you really can't afford is super wise. I know everyone wants to debate it. Obviously the majority of people in this country finance cars and are, fine for it. You could argue that, on average they're driving nicer stuff than me, who's, paid off every vehicle or owned every vehicle I've driven outright. It's nice to have paid off stuff. And again, when you are indebted to someone, that basically means you absolutely have to work to pay them back. I don't know, that creates this weird thing. I'm not saying that everyone can just sort of not work, because, regardless, you are going to have to pay some kind of bill or something. It's almost impossible to exist on this planet for free. Again, you could really saddle yourself, and a few of my friends have gotten themselves into houses, and there's a part of me who is man, I'm super jealous because that was 100% my goal. Owning a home before 30 was one of my biggest goals. I've completely failed that, and some of my friends have succeeded in doing it. At the same time, I can also see that they are now sort of straddled by that decision because, well, now they can't just up and move. I mean, maybe they could trade their equity into something else and upgrade houses, but I think it limits them a lot. You know, now they can never stop working. They can't just pack up and go live somewhere else for a short period of time, which is something that I've kind of been doing. I mean, even to some degree, it's hard to just get away from it sometimes. And now they've literally put themselves in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. I mean, they just simply cannot stop working because they owe other people so much money. That being said, you know, I'm not a particular success at 30. I do feel like I spent most of my 20s working my butt off and working at shit jobs that I gave way too much to, trying my own entrepreneurial adventures, trying my own things, trying to make things happen. You know, YouTube has been a huge thing for me, not on this channel, but I have 2 other channels that I've worked really, really hard at, and I was hoping to at least supplement or make a full-time living from them. And I really don't think I was asking a whole lot there. And I don't know. And I've also tried to basically start a video company, a video production company. And I have been doing freelance video work, but it hasn't been nearly enough. I worked with this other guy, and we sort of had a deal where he was feeding me work, doing this particular type of work in his business. I mean, I was more or less treated like a W-2 employee who was misclassified, but I was on 1099, and that whole thing's a mess, but I was basically desperate to get video work and do that, and that's what I did. It really feels like, especially at this exact point, things have come crashing down, and possibly in a good way, but I don't know how to describe it. The other thing that's kind of been going on has been, like, since I'm living with my parents because I can't figure out how to make a fucking living. I'm living with my parents. I've lived in this childhood home that I did live in for like the past 30 years, 29 years. I mean, and recently they made the decision to sell that home and move to a new place. And so that is what has happened. This last week, it's been a huge, hectic, big move. And we moved about an hour north of Denver. And, I don't know. I mean, it's not been particularly beneficial for me. Beggars can't be choosers. I don't know. I don't get a say in anything. I mean, my room and my space is a downgrade. I'm farther from everything that was in my life. A lot of the work that I may or may not be getting is probably still going to be central to the city, which is now an hour further away. I do think it really hurt my chances at figuring out a video route in the city. It may help me find some other kind of employment. For the past 2 years, I have applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs. I have looked for so many opportunities, and I really have applied for a lot of jobs. I keep going through this cycle of like, I want to go into business for myself and be entrepreneurial and come up with ways to make money without a job. And then I sort of fall short of that and go back to the cycle of like, well, it's not working out. I guess I have to get a job. And I've just been really stuck in that. And I've felt really, really stuck in my life for like years now. And it's getting really, really frustrating. And I'm kind of getting, like, scared. And I don't really know what to do. I've never really felt like this, and I've never, like, feared the future quite as much as I do. Because I really don't... I'm having a hard time seeing how I'm going to make a living. I guess the caveat and the bottom line is, like, I don't know how to make a living without being, like, completely miserable and, like, basically suicidal all the time. And I know that sounds like such a whiny thing. I really think if you came to me and you were like, yeah, you just have to work some 9 to 5 for the rest of your life that you don't care about, and that's just going to be your life, I don't know, I wouldn't want to do that. I would want a way out. And that's just like the most miserable sounding existence. And I'm not saying, I'm not disparaging anybody who has to do anything to survive on this planet. If I just have to just work for somebody else and just do some dumb job, you know, like, and I'm talking especially like some of the entry level just shit jobs in this country. Like, if I get stuck in that, I don't think I'm going to tolerate that for very long. I mean that in like the most morbid way possible, which sounds so bad, but it's also very true, and I'm getting very scared of that. And I don't know, I have to be honest, I mean, I'm really unhappy in life. I have like no idea how to solve that. And I've been trying very hard. And I feel like I've even tried some of the more BS kind of sounding things. And so I guess that's a big part of this. Even though I've been through some like really hard things, and I've survived some things that a lot of people may not have, I don't feel good about where I am in life in kind of any way. And a lot of my relationships, I think, have suffered a lot in the past 5 years from a weird mix of like me being really obsessive about YouTube and like success in general, and just like really hyper focusing on like trying to become better, which is so ironic because like I'm just such a fucking loser at 30 given how hard I tried. And it's kind of like it bothers me because I just don't get it, and it's scary. It's scary when you're like actually trying and you put in a lot of work to get somewhere and like you can't figure it out. I mean, you just feel like a failure, or feel like you're literally not able to go to get what you're fucking after. And it's a very, very bad feeling. Like, I want very, very big YouTube channels. I want to make a good amount of money through them. I want to do video work. And, you know, I have other dreams that I'm not necessarily, like, I don't want to share them because, I don't know, first of all, it just feels and sounds lame to do, but there's certain things that I want, and I want things that are much higher than just myself and just being able to buy a house. I want to position myself to be able to help people in a massive way and make big changes and actually help a lot of people. And I'm not just trying to just acquire wealth aimlessly. There's things that I think can be made to happen. But on the other hand, I think there's also this clinging to control that drives people crazy and makes people so unhappy. You know, like you just try to control everything or control anything, and some of it you can't control. Which is so cliche, but I don't know. And there's a part of me that wants to reject every cliche thing that everybody says. There's so many things that people say in life that are sort of like these mantras, these cliches, these things that people just say over and over again. And for some of them, I'm starting to believe they just believe that because they've heard it 1,000 times, because it's cliche. They don't have any evidence personally. They don't know, you know, and people just sort of say things that they believe are true because they've heard them 1,000 times, or it just sounds like this thing about life that's correct. And there's a part of me that wants to like really kind of reject some of that. Alright, my camera overheated, so I'm gonna have to switch positioning on this. I am just very frustrated in general with my progress in life, and I really did have a lot of big goals that I wanted to complete by 30, and it just feels like I've fallen really, really short of that. And there's a lot of weird issues that I think I've been dealing with. I think battling my depression and just trying to like find the general motivation to like keep going on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how fucking overwhelming it is. Because I mean, it's just like, it's really, really hard to like go out there and do your best when like all you could think about when you woke up was dying. And I don't know, man. I really don't know how to push past it. I've reached out for so much help through friends and family. I've sought professional help so aggressively and so much, and like it just isn't working. And it's really frustrating and scary that like the professionals that are supposed to help you like sometimes don't even take it seriously, or just don't seem to care about helping you as a person at all. And you can just tell every time you speak with one of these people, they're just going through a checklist, their insurance checklist. Oh, they got to make sure they ask X, Y, and Z before we can even begin to treat you like a human. It's like, well, first of all, what's your date of birth? Second of all, are you feeling suicidal? Do we need to direct, it's just, I don't know. The whole process is dehumanizing. And I don't know how to navigate it. I mean, the bottom line is, this just kind of isn't where I was expecting to be by 30. I know really high expectations of yourself and maybe out of life can be really dangerous. And ultimately, maybe, that's kind of the root of a lot of people's unhappiness, is maybe really high expectations. And I think that's true for myself, probably a lot of others. But I don't know, man. I really do feel like I put a lot of work in working towards some of my really lofty goals. At the same time, I also feel like because of how distracted and, I guess, undisciplined I was, it was just really difficult, and I couldn't get a handle on it in a way that I thought I could. In a way, that's something that's even more frustrated, was like I was willing and interested in giving it my all, but I just couldn't quite stay focused. And on a day-to-day basis, I just couldn't stay focused to the point where I was effectively putting the work in. And so I guess now I've failed a few business ventures. Some of them I'm not willing to give up on, but there's still some things that I want to try. I think the thing that I realized in my last couple of years is I've spent so much of my 20s trying to kind of build up those businesses and other lines of work and build my careers, and spent so much time doing all that I kind of neglected building a life. I probably neglected my relationships too much. I think there's a lot to talk about there, because I actually think that's a really challenging thing for this younger generation. Is there's a lot of people who I think, I don't know, have odd attitudes. I think our social lives, between the big sick time, social media, and technology, I think a lot of things have really adversely affected our communication as human beings. And I think there's a lot of weird stuff going on with that. And I think it's making it really hard for people to build relationships in some cases. I think there's a lot of strange stuff going around on the internet. There's a lot of talk about cutting your friends off, at the first possibility. As soon as, they're not up to par with your standards, just cut them off and move on. Where in reality, relationships are something that both sides need to work on, and neither person is bringing perfection to the table. There is this weird mantra of like, every relationship, I think, is getting to a point where it's transactional, but it has less to do with like maybe a choice or the person who's choosing to do that, and it has a lot to do with the fact that, I don't know, people are really busy, and people have to be very selective about how they choose their time. But it's also kind of ironic, because we have all this technology and all this stuff that's supposed to be simplified and make our lives easier and more efficient, yet somehow it feels like humans are busier than they've ever been. And I don't know if it's just because it's more accessible to do more things, if it's sort of this hamster wheel that we're on, chasing something that maybe doesn't even make sense. There's a lot of people who are just too busy all the time, and it's like, with what are you doing? I talk with people, and it's like they're just busy all the time, just doing like kind of nothing, like chores and running around and little social obligations and all this stuff. And I have a hard time understanding it. And I have been very rigid with my time in that way, and in some cases it's been bad. But I've also found, it makes it really difficult. Like, a lot of my friend group, they want to kind of batch that social time. So, like, they create parties where we can all be together, and it's like that's kind of the only time a lot of us can socialize with people of that friend group, is like when we're together. But personally, I don't like those large group contexts. I don't like parties. I don't like that kind of thing. And so it makes it really tough for me to connect fully with some of those people, even though that feels like it's supposed to be the time for that. And in some cases it literally is. There's a part of me that wants to go back and retry some of my career paths that I've sort of already tried. Like, I kind of want to go back to the trades and go back to automotive, because I do have pretty much the most experience in that field, and it might be my clearest shot to make a living. But at the same time, I don't want to do a lifetime of that type of labor. I really don't. And if I can transition to maybe more of a managerial, business, sales, maybe some kind of whatever management kind of side, maybe that would work. And I also don't want to give up on the video thing, but I can also live with it, not being a full-blown career. And I've never necessarily wanted to be in, like, the Hollywood system, or I don't even know if I've necessarily wanted to be what a lot might call themselves a filmmaker. I am interested in making short films and movies and all that kind of stuff, but I've never necessarily daydreamt about exactly that. It's always been more about YouTube, I think, for me, which is weird. It's weird to say, but to me that social media format is where the future is and is going. I think in the short term here, I'm going to have to take basically any full-time job that I can until I can sort of, I guess, figure out what I want to do, even though I know what I want to do. But I'm going to keep working it on the side and keep working and testing business ideas. I think there's a few business ideas that I have that would be fairly easy and low risk to just test the waters with, just to see if there's any interest in and see if it's work I like doing and can do. But I want to figure out a vehicle to build wealth so that I can then basically use that to build other things that more directly help people. And I was planning on fully structuring my first business within my 20s by doing it in this last week, but the move has been really stressful. The move is another big point of contention because it's such a bittersweet thing. I really loved where we lived. I really loved our house, but at the same time, I was way past my welcome. It's like I was almost 30. I shouldn't have been living at home, but there I was. And at the same time, it was just, I had been there for so long, I was very ready to leave. And even now, I don't think I'm going to miss it all that bad. I managed to have a very cathartic goodbye. I was there when the movers came in and we moved everything out, and it was a very emotional day. But I think, I cried on that day, and I think that allowed me to appropriately release all the emotion kind of then and there. In my opinion, I think is one of the healthiest things that you can do. If you're in the moment and you allow yourself to be sad in that moment, which I think a lot of people try and not do that. They try and stuff the emotions away or hold it for later or whatever. But I think if you can sort of let it out then and there, it's really very cathartic, and you're able to move on from it quicker. And so I think by doing that very day, right now, I think I'm in a really good place and moving past it fairly quickly just because I had that closure. And so even when I go back, I'll probably do a little bit of a goodbye, but I've essentially had one foot out the door for so long that I've practically been begging for this to happen. It's just that this move, of course, doesn't happen on my terms. It's not my money. It's not my choice. It's not my house. It's a very weird thing because it's like, it's bittersweet that it's going. It's sad that they have to sell. But at the same time, I shouldn't even be here. And I was intending to work so hard that at this point in my life, I would be helping my parents with retirement. I was expecting to be in a position to maybe even buy them a home in a relatively short, distance of time from now. But I feel like I'm in a position where I should be, giving them the world because they've given me so much. And I don't know, I've fallen very short of that. I have lived a bit of a story. I've seen some interesting things. I've traveled. I've worked a lot of different jobs and gotten a lot of experience that way. Seen a lot of the world in that way. A lot of humanity specifically, Especially when you work those blue collar jobs, you hear all kinds of crazy stories and you meet all kinds of crazy characters, and even seeing some stuff, it's like guys I worked with got DUIs. I worked with a guy who got burnt on the job really bad. I worked with a guy who got arrested at the job, Just crazy little stuff like that kind of make for a good story, I guess. So I think recently I've been focusing on building up that dad lore and trying to do that kind of thing. I think that's what this channel is all about, is building dad lore. But I don't know. I think I'm going to be okay. Like I said, there's a lot of people who make it to this age who maybe haven't realized and understood a lot of things. It's hard not to sound arrogant when you say things like this, but I feel like over the past 10 years, I've learned and realized and gained so much wisdom. And again, it sounds kind of arrogant to say that kind of thing, and I'm not saying I've mastered everything. I can't even make a goddamn living, right? But at the same time, sometimes when I talk to people, I kind of understand, like, man, some people just actually haven't been kicked around by life that much. Some people, the other thing I think about with, like, my job hopping is, even though I've job hopped and I haven't focused down on one career, I've also experienced a lot. So I've done a lot of cool things and learned some interesting skills. I was a forklift operator, cook, dishwasher. And you learn so many weird soft skills and other, of course, hard skills when you do that. I'm kind of grateful for that, rather than maybe sticking in one thing and sort of mastering one thing. Although, that makes for a great career, I like having that experience and knowing a lot of sort of random stuff. Again, building that dad lore and just living a life that was interesting more than successful, I suppose. At the same time, a lot of the stuff that I want to do requires money, and lots of it. And I do think I'm at a point where I have realized that I think, being self-employed is going to be kind of my only option, or at least the option that I want to do. I think in the short term here, I'm going to have to probably, yet again, take another job and figure that out as quickly as possible. I think continuing to look down various self-employment paths is the key. But today we are at least in Estes Park. I got a 2-night camping trip. Tonight will be the second night. I'm going to do a nice birthday dinner for myself. We're going to do the classic steak and just some veggies and a root beer. And I bought some candy, but yeah, always got to go with the steak on my birthday, I think. And I'm just out doing it alone. I actually specifically wanted to be alone on this particular birthday, just because I knew it would just be an emotionally hard day. I've been in my head all day, which I usually am. I was really kind of worried that I was gonna kind of wallow in my own misery and be upset all day, but I feel oddly hopeful and good. And it was a really good day. I had a pretty amazing hike this morning. I managed to get out early. The hike was a lot more challenging than I thought. It was also threatening to rain/thunderstorm tonight, which I was worried about, but the weather is now saying it's going to clear up. I might have to deal with that, but I think hopefully we should stay pretty dry and comfy, and I'll be able to cook and have a fire tonight. And that's really all I'm going to do, and I'm just going to, basically what I've been doing is going back through my whole life and kind of trying to remember everything. And that's good to coincide with this particular birthday, but also with the move, anytime you move, you kind of go through all your stuff. And so I personally went through all of my personal belongings, which also includes a lot of memories, mementos, and old pictures and stuff. Just the combination of all of this, the big move, going through all that stuff, and then this particular birthday, it's like I've had a very clear reflection of my life. And that's kind of what I'm going to keep doing, and what I'm really excited to do, and this happens every time. Every time I take a vacation or I take a break or a camping trip, I think the whole time, and then I get really excited about getting back to real life and getting started on stuff. It always happens. And now I just want to, it's like while I'm out here, all I can think about is like work, and then when I'm at work, all I can think about is out here. I think that's a very common problem amongst many, but being present is definitely a challenge for me. I don't even know what that means, if I'm being 100% honest. Moving forward, I think I have a pretty solid game plan, and within these next couple months, I think I can scrape up a little bit of extra money as well as save some money. It's kind of interesting because the move that we did, we're moving to a much less populated and outside the city, so my auto insurance has dropped, and I'm gonna save money in a bunch of different areas too through other choices. But anyway, so that's kind of the plan and how I'm feeling. It's a lot. 30. Dirty 30. What a disgusting number. I've never had so much resentment towards an age. I've never been so fearful of a birthday my whole life. And part of that too is, like, it sounds so stupid. I don't know, 20-year-olds get so worked up about it. I used to be not afraid of aging at all. And I don't know what happened. I think you hit a point where it just slips by. People are so fearful of this age, and it's just like, there is a relief. I don't know why. It's just, it's over with. I didn't hit my goals, And I think I can live with the failure, I guess. But anyway, thanks for watching.